All 32 NFL teams have expectations entering each and every year, and 2024 will be no different. Some teams are expected to seriously compete and make a deep postseason run, while others are rebuilding. In today's video, we will break down 4 NFL teams with the most to prove entering the 2024 season. What we mean, of course, when we say most to prove, is most to prove based on where the expectations are for the said team entering the year. A team like Kansas City doesn't have anything to prove because their play has spoken for itself over the past 5 years. But for other NFL teams, like the Eagles for example, well, they reached the Super Bowl during the 2022 season before starting out with a 10-1 record in 2023, only to go 1-5 in the final 6 regular season games and lose by 23 points in the wild card round of the playoffs. The Eagles, for example, have a lot to prove entering the year, and we will break down not only the Philadelphia Eagles, but a few other teams in today's video, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video with the Eagles. Like we mentioned in the intro, Philly lost 6 of their final 7 games last year, with the lone win coming over the New York Giants on Christmas Day. And even that win was over a very banged up Giants team who was quarterbacked by Tyrod Taylor and Tommy DeVito. But the Eagles' collapse down the stretch of the 2023 season was particularly bad, because this was a team that at times during the 2022 and 2023 seasons looked like they were destined to be Super Bowl champions, and maybe even multiple-time Super Bowl champions. They started the year 5-0 with wins over future playoff teams like Tampa and Los Angeles, and would go on to beat the Dolphins, Cowboys, Chiefs, and Bills on their way to the 10-1 start. There was a ton of attention around the Eagles, and in particular head coach Nick Sirianni. Sirianni has been boisterous in the media at times, and most notably had a quote regarding the tush push that if everybody could do it, everybody would do it. And when you factor in all of the shenanigans isn't the right word for Sirianni, but unnecessary attention he has brought to the team at times, combined with the awful collapse they had at the end of the year, well, they enter the 2024 season as one of the teams with the most to prove. Not only that, but I do think Nick's job is on the line. It's one thing to be talking in the media when you're up, but it's another when you get your tail tucked between your legs with a 23-point loss at home to the 49ers and a 20-point loss to your bitter rival the next week in Dallas. And why I was particularly frustrated with the Eagles down the stretch of the 2023 season was not just my frustration with offensive coordinator Brian Johnson, but defensive coordinator Sean Desai too. There were times, and the Cardinals game was a big one, but there were times where defensively pre-snap I don't know what the intent was when watching tape, and I don't understand what they were trying to accomplish. Arizona ran for over 220 yards in this game, and there were signs this was going to be a very long day, and early. There was a 3rd and 6 where the Cardinals called an orbit motion screen to the front side with 2 clearouts and double slants to the backside. Avonte Maddox rolls with Rondale Moore on the orbit motion, and when he rolled, Reed Blankenship should have taken a few steps closer to the receiver, knowing there's nobody to cover him on this cover 1 called by Desai, and Kyler sees the space and makes an easy throw for a gain of 7. Linebacker Nicholas Morrow had his head turned when the ball was snapped, and him and Maddox both ran to the flat to, I guess, what was supposed to assist Maddox if he didn't make the tackle on the screen, but even when he's hand signaling to Kevin Byard, Byard is looking at Reed Blankenship, and as you can see, there is confusion everywhere. And this summarized the Eagles' second half of the season and why they were so dysfunctional. And this is just one example from a 3rd down on the first drive of a Week 17 game against a team that finished with the number 4 overall draft pick. And simply put, this can't happen from the Eagles in 2024. This team looks so out of sorts down the stretch of the 2023 season, and how they respond this year is going to be monitored in a big way. And they are without a doubt one of the teams that have the most to prove entering the 2024 season. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and believe it or not, 2024 is nearly halfway over, and when life goes fast, it's important to stop and celebrate your wins. Therapy can help you take stock of your progress and set achievable goals for the next 6 months, and a personal goal of mine is to be at 175k subs by the end of the 2024 calendar year, and to be at 200k subs by the 2025 NFL Draft. We'll see if we can get there. But it empowers you to be the best version of yourself, and it isn't just for those who have experienced major trauma. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and is designed to be convenient, flexible, and to suit your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and one of the best parts about BetterHelp is you can switch therapists at any point for no additional charge. Visit betterhelp.com/analysis for 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/analysis for 10% off your first month, and a big thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. To New York to discuss the Jets, and despite the initial thought of this being an Aaron Rodgers related segment, it's not strictly just because of Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, Aaron plays a big part in this, and we'll get to him, but it's more than just the 4-time league MVP. Now, whenever we discuss the NFL draft and how franchises build through the draft, there's no better gold standard right now than the Detroit Lions, and they were extremely close to going to their first Super Bowl in franchise history last January. But the Jets have had a lot of success through the draft over the past few years, minus one position of course, and I think it's going to be shown in a big way this year. It's not an exaggeration to say that the 2022 draft haul of Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, and Breece Hall could be one of the best drafts not just over the past 5 to 7 years, but in the 21st century. And why the Jets have a lot to prove this year is because they are in a similar situation that the Lions are in with all of their guys. Whether it's Penei, Hutch, Amon-Ra, or anybody else in Detroit's case, or the guys from the 2022 class in the Jets' case, there's never going to be a better window for the Jets to win a Super Bowl than this year. And the reason we say 2024 for the Jets, of course, rather than over the next few years, is because of Aaron Rodgers' age. He is 40 years old, and you would think he would get worse after the age 40 season and not get better, as that's typically how it goes, but the 2022 class is also in their prime. When you think of how a player's career goes in the NFL, or really any sport, they usually get better from year 1 to year 2 and eventually peak in their mid to late 20s. But Sauce Gardner is already a 2-time first-team All-Pro and is at the top of his game. Breece Hall plays a position where his prime is going to be much shorter than somebody like Garrett Wilson, or at least you would think, and running backs do not last forever. Not to say Breece's career is halfway over or anything like that, but the point is, when you factor in an aging quarterback and 2 aging offensive tackles in Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses, who I don't expect either to play a full 17 games, this is the year for the Jets to truly win it all. Now, I know they drafted Olu Fashanu from Penn State, and I loved Olu as a prospect, but he will start the year as a backup, which is fine, though I do expect him to eventually start at some point. The Jets have won 7 games in each of the last 2 seasons with bad quarterback play, which was incredibly frustrating for guys like Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams, and CJ Mosley, and you get the point. And at the time I record this, Aaron Rodgers was not at mandatory minicamp, and head coach Robert Saleh said that he was missing camp due to something that was important to him, but this could have been avoided. And when you have a head coach with a losing record and you have a head coach and GM whose jobs are effectively on the line, well, the Jets have a lot to prove this year. I completely understand why Saleh and Joe Douglas were brought back despite the losing record last year, but the tumultuous 2023 season is in the past, and now it's time for results. This franchise hasn't been to the playoffs in well over a decade, and this is the year where it truly is put up or shut up time for the New York Jets. Now, from the Big Apple to the Big A, we go to discuss the Falcons. The Falcons are in a situation similar to the Jets, where they've had talented teams, but no quarterback to push them to the next level. They've had 3 straight 7-win seasons and went out and signed former Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins this offseason. With guys like Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and of course the running back duo in Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, even a league average quarterback would substantially upgrade this offense, truly. And Kirk was playing close to an MVP level before he went down with a torn Achilles last year. Kirk was on pace for a 4,900-yard, 38-touchdown season, and needless to say, if the Falcons had that type of production at the quarterback position last year, well, they would have made the playoffs and they would have been a tough out. But the Falcons put themselves in quite the pickle by drafting Washington quarterback Michael Penix at number 8 overall. This was just 6 weeks after they signed free agent quarterback Kirk Cousins to a 4-year, $180 million contract, with 100 of that being guaranteed. Now, if the Penix selection works out, great, you have your franchise quarterback of the future, but pertaining to 2024 specifically, there's not a lot of room for error for the Falcons, because if Kirk starts to mess up, or if Kirk has a bad game or two, or a couple of multi-interception games in a row, the media is going to be hounding them, and they're going to be hearing it from everywhere. They put a tremendous amount of pressure on themselves by selecting Michael Penix at number 8 overall when a receiver like Rome Odunze was available. Now, this is not me saying that Rome Odunze will 100% be a better receiver in the NFL than Michael Penix will be quarterback, but what I am saying is the Falcons put a tremendous amount of unnecessary pressure and stress on themselves from the fan base and from the media before the season even begins. Not only that, but the Michael Penix Jr. selection was not one that happened overnight, meaning when they were courting Kirk Cousins in free agency and when they had him and his family in, they knew that Penix being a Falcon was a very real possibility. Owner Arthur Blank did not walk into the war room when they were on the clock at number 8 overall and say, "Hey, Terry Fontenot, buddy, you either make this pick or you're fired." And not only that, but the Falcons' first 3 games in 2024 are going to be pretty difficult, which will only increase expectations and stress and pressure from the media if they start out 1-2 or 0-3. Their first 3 games are home against the Steelers, at Philly on Monday night, then come home to play the Chiefs in week 3. There's a very real possibility, even despite the improvements they made, that they start out 1-2 or again, even 0-3. And with that possibility in mind, the Falcons to me are without a doubt one of the teams that have the most to prove entering the 2024 season. To Cleveland to discuss the Browns, and there is a lot to unpack with this. The 2023 Browns had a lot of ups and downs, and they were a very fun team to watch down the stretch of the season. The Joe Flacco run was a fun time for everyone, and the city and team embraced Flacco while he was their starting quarterback. He went 4-1 as the team starter before they lost to the Texans in the wild card round of the playoffs. If you are a Browns fan, you can very easily say, well, we were extremely banged up, and it was a miracle we even made the playoffs to begin with, let alone with a 38-year-old quarterback, and let alone with an offensive line that was down bad by the time December rolled around. And this was all accomplished after losing one of the best running backs in the league to a gruesome injury in week 2 against the Steelers. And all of those points are valid. But we're now entering a year in which expectations are higher, and the Browns are expected to seriously compete for a division title and win at least one playoff game. When discussing teams prior to the start of any regular season, you have to discuss teams and how they project when healthy, because the reality is, if you would have said the Jets would lose Aaron Rodgers 4 snaps into the season in June of last year, or that the Browns would have had Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb, and Jack Conklin play a combined 9 games, 27% of their offensive starters, well, you would have expected the worst for both teams. The reason we bring that up, of course, is because there's no excuses for a healthy Browns roster to not seriously compete this year. And I think we're at a point with Kevin Stefanski as head coach where he's not on the hot seat, to be clear, but it's very much now or never. You have all the talent you need to compete in the NFL, and while the playoff win back in 2020 over the Steelers was nice, and every Browns fan certainly enjoyed the win on the road over the Steelers, that was 4 years ago, and they have a singular playoff appearance since. It's certainly not going to be easy in the AFC North of all divisions, and playing the Bengals, Ravens, and Steelers a combined 6 times is not fun for anybody. And I made a video about how tough it will be to compete in this division for not just Cleveland, but for all 4 teams, which I recommend going to check out. But I think the 2024 Browns season is very much going to be a put up or shut up year for them. They have a lot of talent on this roster, whether it's Myles Garrett, or either of the guards in Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller, or the veteran in Za'Darius Smith, or whoever. The point is, if they stay relatively healthy and not have 5 quarterbacks start for them over the course of a 17-game season, they need to step up. Due in large part to the contract, Deshaun Watson is also in a very interesting situation, and he too is under a ton of pressure entering the year. Will he get back to the Texans version of Deshaun or be the player we've seen for most of his time in Cleveland, outside of one half against the Ravens? That's what a lot of the 2024 Brown season comes down to, and they have a lot to prove this year. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe. It's only about 34% of people watching are subscribed and helps the channel tremendously. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video, and until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.